blast went off in Havana's Saratoga hotel in high morning. Authorities report serious damages on the emblematic lodging facility and nearby buildings, as well as severely injured victims who are being tended to in emergency care. Russia reiterated it does not intend to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations convened a meeting Friday in a fresh effort to organize humanitarian assistance for Myanmar. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin. From the Telesur studios in Havana, we begin with the news. A blast went off in Havana's Saratoga hotel in high morning, causing a commotion in a highly transited area of the capital near Central Park and the capital, the headquarters of the government. Social media is bursting with videos taken by the people gathered around the site of the catastrophe, which is filled by thick smoke and debris. The explosion left the first and second floors of the hotel and nearby areas with severe damages. Authorities report severely injured victims found among the rubble who were taken to the hospital, Calixto Garcia, for emergency treatment. Firefighters are asking bystanders to remain far from the structure as it presents a risk of collapsing. Extraofficially, witnesses argue that a possible cause of the blast could be a fatal mishap during a downloading procedure of liquefied gas from a fuel-carrying truck to the hotel. The president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, arrived to the location to personally address the situation as search and rescue efforts continue. The president is accompanied by Prime Minister Marrero Cruz and the president of the National Assembly, Esteban Lasso. In the middle of his tour of the region, the president of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, urged the promotion of regional unity and respect for the sovereignty of the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean. The Mexican head of state, in his speech at the National Palace of Culture in Guatemala, declared that all of America must move towards an economic and commercial integration without exclusions, regardless of ideologies, and indicated that orderly migratory mechanisms are urgently needed. The Mexican head of state expressed that migration issues in the countries of origin must be attended to, explaining that it is there where jobs, development, and welfare must be ensured. AMLO also stressed to the United States that he will continue to insist on the need for collaboration. Luis Enrique Ramirez Ramos has become the 9th journalist killed in Mexico in 2022 in what has proven to be a particularly dead year for media workers in the country. Ramirez Ramos's body was found on a dirt road wrapped in plastic near a junkyard in the capital of Sinaloa state. Prosecutors said he died from multiple blows to the head. Ramirez Ramos was listed as the founding director of the Fuentes Fidedignas website, which reported he was abducted near his house hours before his body was found. While the website covered relatively little on drug cartel violence that plagues Sinaloa, it did report often on local political disputes, which can be a risky subject for reporters in the state. He also worked with the El Debate newspaper. Reporters are often targeted in the country for highlighting drug cartels and their connections to local politicians and police. During its visit to Nicaragua, the high-level delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran held a meeting with representatives of the national government, parliament, and other strategic sectors of the Central American country. The president of the National Assembly, Gustavo Borras, thanked the visit of the Persian delegation, with whom they discussed various issues to deepen friendship, economic, and commercial ties. Laureano Ortega Murillo, presidential advisor for the promotion of investments, trade, and international cooperation, as well as other members of the national legislature, was present on behalf of the Nicaraguan executive. During his speech, the Iranian oil minister congratulated the Sandinista Front for its victory in the last general elections and ratified his country will be to consolidate and enrich the relations between both nations.
And my colleagues, and also the esteemed deputies of the Parliament of Iran, have a mission from the President of the Republic, Dr. Ebrahim Raisi, and also the President of the Parliament, Dr. Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf, to develop and deepen economic and commercial cooperation with the broader country of Nicaragua.
Colombia's Constitutional Court has put a deterrent to the constitutional guarantees law approved by Congress and added a strong warning to the legislature and the administration of President Iván Duque for eluding a prior control of constitutionality, among other irregularities. The High Court also considered that the actions of the legislature and the executive negatively impacted the exercise of the functions that the Constitution stipulates for each authority branch within the institutional design, especially the competence of the court itself. The document sent by the court to both powers underscores that the error lies in the lack of transparency and electoral balance, that is, the equality of all candidates and political organizations, as well as the freedom of voters. The court says that the law of guarantees approved by the Colombian Congress is unconstitutional because the Congress does not have the power to modify a statutory law through an ordinary law. The Colombian presidential candidate Federico Gutierrez for the movement Creemos visited the Mera department where he shared his government proposals at the Liberators Park. During his tour, Gutierrez proposed urban projects from the city of Bogotá to the municipality of Villavicencio without tolls and with different tax controls. The right-wing candidate reaffirmed that if he wins the presidential elections on May 29th, his administration will triple the resources for the countryside to guarantee the country's food security. He also pledged to encourage infrastructure and the development of businesses linked to tourism, including a plan for cultural tourism, agritourism, meeting tourism, and ecotourism. On the other hand, candidate Gustavo Petro for the historic pact attended a rally in the northern department of Santander where he referred to a full reestablishment of diplomatic and consultative relations between Colombia and Venezuela. During his speech, Petro committed to resume the railroad between Cúcuta and Maracaibo Lake in Venezuela, as it is very useful to guarantee the flow of goods. He said the project could be the first major integration program between both nations. Gustavo Petro reaffirmed that Cúcuta, the capital of the department, is no longer a stronghold for Uribismo. Given the candidate's accusations about a plan to assassinate him, local authorities strengthened his security detail. On Thursday, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro renewed his criticism on state-owned company Petrobras and its pricing policy upon learning of the company's profits in the first quarter of this year, a record never before seen in such a short period. The president referred to the matter as an unacceptable crime. The oil company, which is controlled by the state but is listed on the Sao Paulo, New York, and Madrid stock exchanges, obtained over 44 million reais, about $9,094 billion in profits on the first quarter of this year. According to figures released by the company, this brought on outrage on the part of the President Bolsonaro, who said that he does not intend to intervene in Petrobras, but regretted the profit margin in times of crisis. The president has been voicing his criticism on the company's management since 2011. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi and welcome back to From the South. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party lost control of key councils in London according to partial results from local and regional United Kingdom elections on Friday, with a potentially historic change looming in Northern Ireland. The main opposition Labour Party of Keir Starmer won control of long-term Conservative strongholds in the capital, including Wandsworth and Barnet, as well as Westminster for the first time since 1964, with around a third of English votes counted. Poor results could reignite discontent within Prime Minister's ruling Conservatives about his leadership after a string of recent scandals. Johnson has tried to sideline the so-called Partygate scandal that last month saw him become the first British premier to be fined for breaking the law while in office. Yerevan, the capital of Armenia, is once again experiencing an intense day of protests this Friday. Hundreds of demonstrators are marching or blocking areas adjacent to the Congress and other state headquarters. Shouting out Pashinyan crowds of people have surrounded institutional buildings and closed busy roads in the capital and in the largest cities of the country. Security cordons can barely contain demonstrators. At least 150 people have been arrested in the last 24 hours, among them several leaders of opposition parties. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has not been able to address the situation since the end of the crisis in the Caucasus and the confrontations with Azerbaijan for the control of the Nagorno-Karabakh region, which was lost 6 weeks after the start of the armed conflict with the neighboring country. Russia's foreign ministry stated on Friday that Russia does not intend to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine.
We have to stay ready for any development of events, both in the media field and repeatedly had to refute insinuations about Russia's possible use of nuclear weapons during the special military operation in Ukraine. This is a deliberate lie. Russia firmly adheres to the principle that there can be no winners in a nuclear war and it must not be unleashed.
There are new developments at the Azovstal metallurgical plant in the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol. While the Russian Defense Ministry and the Donetsk militia try to establish humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians, nationalists and mercenaries are holding them hostage and demanding food and water to free them. According to United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, a third operation to evacuate civilians is underway. However, nothing is being said about the 15 people used by Ukrainian nationalists as a bargaining chip. The method previously used in Syria when Daesh terrorists executed innocent civilians if their demands were unheard is the response of the pro-Nazis to the Russian proposal to surrender with full respect to the Geneva Accords and under the protection of the United Nations and the International Red Cross. 2 weeks ago, Moscow claimed that in intercepted calls to Kyiv, the mercenaries proposed their surrender but were threatened to be killed if they did so. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Friday took part in a wreath-laying ceremony at memorial plaques inside his ministry ahead of upcoming Victory Day celebrations. During the ceremony, Lavrov honored the memory of those who died during the World War II and said Russia will continue defending historical truth and the legitimate interests of the Russian Federation despite sanctions and other punishments from the West. Lavrov added that at stake is the future of the world, what this world will be like, unipolar under the full command of the United States, or will it be fair and democratic? As he said, Russia holds its annual Victory Day on May 9th, marking the end of World War II. Hungary replied with a no to the proposal of the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Prime Minister Viktor Orban says their plan is an atomic bomb for the European economy. The Hungarian premier affirmed on Friday that his country is not ready to accept a plan that bans Russian oil and gas. The PM said the bloc's proposal implies a millionaire investment that would take more than 5 years for its implementation. Orban reiterated that his government is ready for new negotiations and agreements since the European Commission President's plan is extremely costly and complex. In Ukraine, finally, the United Nations Human Rights High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet acknowledged that they are aware of at least 8 cases of forced disappearances of pro-Russian citizens after the Russian ambassador to the Security Council strongly reprimanded High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet, reminding her that the actions and declarations of her office on the situation in Ukraine went beyond the attributions and competences of other UN agencies. Bachelet said her office has 8 possible cases of documented forced disappearances of alleged pro-Russian individuals in the territories controlled by Kyiv. The report was presented by the commissioner herself at the Security Council. Since the beginning of the military operation and over the course of 14 years, human rights groups in the Donbas region have denounced before United Nations and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, numerous human rights violations, including torture, extraordinary executions, and forced disappearances carried out by the Nazi army of Ukraine without any organization taking action. China's COVID-19 prevention and control situation has been generally stabilized since the beginning of May, with drop in daily confirmed cases and asymptomatic carriers, Mi Feng, spokesman for the National Health Commission, reported on Friday.
Since mid-April, the overall epidemic situation in the country has shown a decline trend with some fluctuations. The situation nationwide was generally stable during the Labor Day holiday. An average of nearly 5,800 daily infections was reported between April 30 and May 5th, dropping by 80% compared with the peak level. Daily infections continue to decrease in Shanghai recently, and the epidemic prevention and control situation is stabilizing. Jilin province is putting the finishing touches to its epidemic prevention and control work, with risk basically controlled outside the quarantine facilities and areas under closed-off management. the risk of virus spread has been minimized in Beijing after nucleic acid screening and close contact tracking.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations convened a meeting Friday in the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh in a fresh effort to organize humanitarian assistance for Myanmar. Organizers said the hybrid meeting, which included participation via video, was attended by high-level representatives from Myanmar and the other 9 member states of ASEAN, its external partners, United Nations specialized agencies, and other relevant international organizations. The effort is part of an attempt to revive a 5-point consensus on Myanmar reached in April last year. The consensus calls for the immediate cessation of violence, a dialogue among all concerned parties, mediation by an Asian special envoy, provision of humanitarian aid through Asian channels, and a visit to Myanmar by the special envoy to meet all concerned parties. Myanmar agreed to the consensus but then made scant efforts to implement it. Civil rights groups denounced an Israeli high court decision that approved the eviction of roughly 1,000 women, men, children, and elderly Palestinians to make way for a military training zone. Residents of 8 villages had been in court for around 20 years fighting Israeli government efforts to evict them. The case of Masafer Yara, or Firing Zone 918, an agriculture area near Hebron in the occupied West Bank, has been one of Israel's longest-running legal battles. In the early 1980s, the army declared the 30-square-kilometer territory a restricted military area and claimed it was uninhabited. In its decision, the High Court said the villagers failed to prove their claim to permanent residence before its declaration as a training zone. Amid escalating violence in the region, 3 Israeli citizens were killed in an attack and 3 others resulted injured. Tel Aviv authorities claimed the attackers were Palestinian. The Israeli army have decreed a state of high alert and asks Israelis to stay in their homes due to a repression operation to be launched against Palestinian settlements. On Thursday, several media reported that an alleged Palestinian citizen attacked a group of people with a knife, causing injuries to 6 Israelis, 3 of whom were killed due to the wounds. Final preparations are underway ahead of the May 9th elections in the Philippines, which will decide who succeeds President Rodrigo Duterte. Filipinos head to the polls on Monday to elect a new president and vice president and half of the 24-seat Senate among national posts. Voters will also get to choose among candidates for more than 18,000 local positions, including provincial governors, town mayors, and House of Representatives seats. Current Vice President Leni Robredo and former Senator Ferdinand Marcos Jr., son and namesake of the ousted dictator, are seen as the top 2 contenders in the 10-way presidential race. The latest survey by Pulse Asia, released earlier this week, showed Marcos Jr. topped the poll with 56% support, and Robredo ranked second with 23%. More than 65 million Filipinos have registered to vote in the country and another 1.8 million overseas. In China, at least 53 deaths have been reported after the collapse of an apartment building in the central province of Hunan, and in Shaanxi province in the north of the country, another building collapsed with several people inside. This time it was a warehouse. Local authorities confirmed that at least 10 people were rescued in the first incident, but that they are in critical condition with multiple fractures and psychological distress. The police have arrested at least 11 individuals allegedly involved in the building's collapse. This includes the owner of the building and others responsible for its construction and upkeep. The collapse occurred in Changsha, county town of Hunan province, a week ago. Another similar incident occurred on Friday in Jinjiang in Jiangxi province, where some workers of a construction company warehouse were trapped under the rubble. At least 8 soldiers, members of the Burkina Faso security forces, including 2 volunteers recruited by the authorities to exercise combat capabilities against terrorists, were killed in an attack on Thursday in the north and north-central region of the country. 5 soldiers died after an ambush on a patrol near the north-central town of Pisila, while another soldier and 2 others volunteers were victims of an ambush which occurred in the village Tibu, north of Yarsi. The escalation of violence worsened after the military junta seized power following the coup against the then-president Roch-Marc Christian Kabore in 2015. Sri Lankan police used tear gas and a water cannon on Friday to disperse protesters demonstrating over the country's economic crisis. Shops, offices, and schools closed across the country Friday, and transport came to a near standstill amid widespread demonstrations against the government. Factories, banks, and government offices were also closed, with employees demonstrating in front of them. The Indian Ocean island nation is on the brink of bankruptcy and has suspended payments on its foreign loans. Its economic woes have brought on a political crisis, with the government facing protests and a no-confidence motion in parliament. Protesters have also been occupying the entrance to the president's office in the capital, Colombo, for 28 days, demanding Prime Minister Rajapaksa to resign. In Afghanistan, at least 22 people have been killed and 40 have been injured due to heavy rains and floods, which also caused severe damage to homes and crops in several western provinces of the country. Afghanistan's National Disaster Management Authority Communications Chief Hazibullah Shakani said the western provinces most affected by the rains and floods are Badghis, Faryab, and the northern province of Baghlan. The International Committee of the Red Cross is collaborating to assist the victims, whereas calling on other international organizations to join in providing assistance.
The floods in Cadiz district have frightened the people, and people have left their homes and gone to their places to avoid being harmed by the floods. I lost my 1-year-old child, Asita, in this flood. Our financial losses from the flood are so huge that we cannot even account for it.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at Tell Us Our English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Tell Us Our English, I am Dio Martin. Thank you for watching.